against every nation in history that has moved against Israel either legislatively or militarily. He's doing it today. Many of these charges laid against these ancient people groups have already been executed. A lot of these groups are no more. And the Lord said, you will be no more, and they are no more. He said, in some instances, I will destroy you, and then I'm going to bring you back. And so tonight, for instance, Egypt. Egypt is a nation tonight because God rescued her. At one time, she was destroyed. And so Isaiah records several of these actions. And what we're looking at, especially in this section of Isaiah, these peoples somehow either directly molested Israel, or the Lord used them as illustrations. In other words, what we're going to read tonight, Judah was really leaning on Egypt. You know, they were the big brother down there. And who was the big tall hog at the trough at this point in history? You remember what nation it was? Assyria. Assyria was just beating everybody up. Well, Judah is like this. Assyria is like this. And they're scared to death. And so they turned to Egypt and Ethiopia, Cush. We looked at Cush last week, or week before last. And Judah was like, can y'all be our friend, please? We got this really big problem up there, and we can't handle it. And so maybe we can hold hands. And Egypt and Cush was like, yeah, we'll be your friend. And the Lord was like, do not trust these people. Don't do this. And so something is going to happen, and the Lord is going to use some history to show the Jew in Judah, I told you, don't trust these people. And so the whole bottom line of what we're looking at here tonight, Judah always had a hard time just letting the Lord be their big brother. People were always more attractive to the Jews than God was. Their rifles and their tanks and their armament and their all of that, that was something you could touch and see and measure and handle. And God, but is this invisible? And so they had more confidence in people than they did in the Lord. And so Isaiah 20 records one of these court-ordered invasions. And by court-ordered, I mean God has ordered an invasion. And Judah is not going to be involved in this. They're going to be spectators in the bleachers watching their team get crushed. I mean, this is the team that's going to take them to the playoffs. And they're going to get messed up. So look at verse number 1 of chapter 20. In the year, this is 711 BC. In the year that Tartan is not a name, it was the title of the general that Sargon, who was king of Assyria, sent his general, whose title was the Tartan, down to Ashdod. And Ashdod was part of what's called it was the Pentapolis, which means 5 cities. There were 5 Philistine cities that formed sort of a co-op of muscle, and Ashdod was the chief one. As a matter of fact, Ashdod was sort of the headquarters for the uprising against Assyria. All the phone calls and all the communications and everything came and went from Ashdod. Well, Sargon, who was the king of Assyria, hears about this. Oh, Ashdod's where all this stuff's coming from. So he calls his Tartan, his general, and says, go to Ashdod. Take care of business in Ashdod. So this is what happens. And so in that year, 711 BC, the Tartan came unto Ashdod when Sargon, king of Assyria, sent him. And so he sicked his military on the city of Ashdod, because Ashdod was where all this stuff was turning up. And Sargon, who was the king of Assyria, replaced the king of Ashdod with a guy by the name of Azuri. And Azuri was the mouthpiece for getting all this trouble started against Assyria. And so Sargon replaces Azuri with a friendly to Assyria king by the name of Amiti. And Amiti was not popular. Ashdod did not like him because he was pro-Assyrian. And so things got a little hot in the county seat. So Amiti immediately goes to Egypt because it was out or get killed. And so he goes down to Egypt, and the people in Ashdod replace Amiti with an anti-Assyrian king by the name of Yamani. And so now Yamani is anti-Assyrian, and so the Ashdodites are feeling all good about themselves again. And so the king that was pro-Assyrian goes down to Egypt. Well, Assyria sends like the Marines down to Egypt, and they say, give him to us. And Egypt was like, okay, sure. And so they hand over this anti-Assyrian king to the Assyrian. They dispatch him, okay? Now, who's on the sidelines watching this? Judah. And guess who Judah is really leaning on to take care of them? Egypt. And the Lord is kind of going, Did you see what just happened? They just turned him over. Did you see? Now, you think you can trust these people? And so history was unfolding like a chess match. And hopefully the Jews down in Judah are watching them. But anyway, the message of this particular section, which is basically chapter 20, don't trust Egypt. Do not trust these people because they will throw you to the dogs. Today, Ashdod is the 6th largest city in Israel. It was a Philistine city. It's on the Mediterranean coastline. It was a beach town. As a matter of fact, it is the largest port in Israel today. And Ashdod, we have records of Ashdod being inhabited as early as the 17th century BC. This is one of the oldest cities in the world. And today, the population is a little more than 207,000 Jews, and there are also some Arabs there. But in about 1958, some archaeologists were looking for the city of Ashdod, and they found the ruins of the ancient city of Ashdod, and they went about 4.5 miles northwest of this ancient archaeological site of Ashdod. And in 1968, they incorporated this brand new city of Ashdod, and it's 23.2 square miles today, and it is a really booming city. But this is the area where this particular history took place. And so in 711, Assyria invaded Egypt, and they went to Egypt by way of Ashdod. And this invasion is what's narrated for us in chapter 20, and basically serves as a warning shot across the bow of Judah. Do not trust these. I will take care of you. No. We got to have somebody with some firepower. I will take care of you. Let me show you their firepower, and they're stumbling and falling all in front of the Assyrians. And there are two nations mentioned in chapter 20. And those two nations are Egypt and Ethiopia, or Cush, as of a couple of weeks ago. These were allies. And there were people in Judah that were very, very, very pro-Egyptian, very, very pro-Ethiopian, for military purposes. 3 are better than 1. We're stronger together than we are by ourselves, which was not true. Judah plus God were a majority, but the people in Judah didn't believe that. And so Sargon of Assyria invades both Egypt and Ethiopia. He goes down to Egypt, whackety, 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 goes over to Ethiopia, whackety, whackety, whackety. both of these nations that the Jews were like, yes, yeah, whoa, 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 whoa now. And so they're out of the playoffs, and Judah is kind of like, gulp, because they're looking Assyria square in the eye now. And the Lord will teach you some rough lessons, won't he? He will. And anyway, that's what he was doing here. So in verses 2 through 4, the Lord does one of these sign messages. And he tells Isaiah, let's just read it. All right? At the same time that Assyria was kicking Ashdod, the Lord spake the Lord by Isaiah the son of Amoz, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth from off thy loins, and put off thy shoe from thy foot. And he did so, walking naked. Now he was not stark naked, okay? The word naked there means lightly dressed. So in Jewish culture, you had clothes on, and then you had a cloak, like an outer trench coat is what it was. And so he was to take this trench coat off, which men didn't do. So if you took that off, you were considered culturally naked, and take his shoes off. Now what was the point of that? He walked around. The Lord told him to do this for 3 years. Now he didn't do it 24 hours a day. He did it at appropriate public times. Here comes this guy, barefooted, and he didn't have his trench coat on. And so people were like, what is he doing? And Isaiah would tell them, this is what's going to happen to Egypt and Ethiopia, Cush. Thank you, ma'am. So what Assyrians did, which was very normal in this part of the world, if they captured you, well, they just defeated you militarily. They would strip you butt naked. They would march you back to their hometown with your rear end shining. They would do that. That added to the absolute shame of being defeated militarily. And along the way, you can imagine what happened to the women. I mean, this was just a brutal thing. And Isaiah was a picture. The Lord was saying, this is going to happen to your friends. I'm going to do this to your friends. All right, so let's read verse number 3. And the Lord said, like as my servant Isaiah hath walked naked and barefoot 3 years, for a sign and a wonder upon Egypt and upon Assyria, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptian prisoners and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their hinds uncovered. Now, King James got the word buttocks, but now they are going to be naked. To the shame of Egypt. Now, this happened in 701 BC, about 10 years later. Didn't happen immediately, but 10 years later, the people down in Judah saw Egyptian and Ethiopian captives being hauled off and stripped completely naked. Now what do you think, you heroes? Sometimes you think your team just can't be beat, and then they get beat. And, the horrible aftermath of that, you feel ashamed and naked when your team gets beat. And so they got beat, these two nations. All right, look at verse 5. And they shall be afraid and ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, and of Egypt, their glory. I thought they'd go to national champ. No, they ain't going anywhere. Matter of fact, they don't even have a team anymore. Both of these nations were done away with. And the inhabitants of this isle, and the word isle means coast, so we're looking at Ashdod, shall say in that day, behold, such is our expectation. Now, if Egypt and Ethiopia got beat, what's going to happen to us? Here's Judah right here. Egypt and Ethiopia are out here, and then there's Assyria. And so if these two nations combined can't stop this onslaught, what are we going to do about it? And so The inhabitants of this isle shall say in that day, behold, such is our expectation, whether we flee for help to be delivered from the king of Assyria. How shall we escape? If they got beat, we don't have a chance. Well, can you see the thinking here? Yeah, the thinking is, if we don't have people, we don't have anything. We are absolutely defenseless. What kind of theology is that? You know, I think we as Christians here in the United States, you know, if we don't have everything we need, if you can't count it, put your hands on it, measure it, whatever, well, we're not going to be able to make it. Yeah, you will, you know. Don't discount the presence of God in your life, which is exactly what Judah was doing here. And so in verse, well, that's chapter 20. Pretty quick. Anybody have a question about chapter 20? Okay, it was Egypt and Ethiopia and Egypt and Ethiopia. All right. Chapter 21. Now, the burden of the desert of the sea. Now, this desert of the sea, well, before we run into chapter 21, let me share with you 3 theological lessons that the Lord was trying to teach Judah. Pretty good lesson for us today. Number 1, God is going to destroy Egypt. Chapter 19, the first 7 verses deal with this issue. I will destroy Egypt. And he used the Assyrians to do it. Theological lesson number 2, God is going to restore Egypt. And he did. That's why we have an Egypt tonight. And even said in chapter 19, these people are going to worship me. They haven't done that yet, but that's going to happen as well. And then the third thing, God didn't want Judah to trust Egypt or Ethiopia. Don't do this. I'm grateful that we've got a military. I'm thankful for that. But that's not what keeps America safe. I'm just telling you. God still works like this today. And look at the nations today, right now, in 2019, legislatively and militarily have come against Israel. What do you think the Battle of Armageddon is going to be all about? It's going to be about the Lord taking vengeance on every nation that has moved against Israel. We've had battles of Armageddon forever. As long as there's been a Jewish nation, and these fool generals and kings and dictators and presidents, you know, are coming. I saw a sign the other day, a picture of a bunch of people in where was it, California, that said, as long as we have an Israel, there will be no world peace. And I'm like, I think, what was that Hebrew word? Idiot. Yeah, you idiot. As long as there is an Israel. You know how long people have been saying that? We got to get rid of these people. Well, and I've told you this before, every time anybody attacks Israel, Israel just gets another holiday on the calendar. You know, it's just, all right, we beat them this day. Y'all remember the 6-Day War? And the 7-Day War? I mean, it doesn't take long for the Lord to do what he does. And they're still an unbelieving people. So if he fights for them in an unbelieving state, exactly, what do you think is going to happen when they turn to the Lord? All right, now, let's jump into chapter 21. This is a prophecy about the defeat of Babylon. And verse number 1 says, the burden of the desert of the sea. Now, this desert of the sea is the flatlands around Babylon. Between the 2 rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates, there was a big stretch of land in this area, and it was marshy. And this was called the desert of the sea. The king that is about to come from that part of the world over to Babylon was a gentleman by the name of Merodach-Baladan. And Merodach-Baladan was going to come against Babylon. Nobody thought he had a chance. Now, at this time in history, Judah and Babylon were buddies. Egypt and Ethiopia are gone. Judah's got to look at somebody. They got to have somebody else going to the playoffs. They figure this bunch is our best bet, so they jump on board with the Babylonians now. Okay? And so the burden of the desert of the sea. As whirlwinds in the south pass through, so it cometh from the desert, from a terrible land. All right, now this is this Merodach Baladan. And a grievous vision is declared unto me. The word grievous means stern. All right, now, let me set this up for you. Normally you would think Babylon's going to fall and the Jews are going to go, yes. But not now. Not now. Because this is sort of the last dog in the box for Judah to lean on. And so right now they're allies. And so they do not want Babylon to fall. They do not want Assyria to take Babylon because they know who's next, all right? A grievous vision is declared unto me. The treacherous dealer dealeth treacherously, and the spoiler spoileth. We're talking about Merodach Baladan. Go up, O Elam, now that's Persia, and besiege, O Media, Medes and Persians, all the sighing thereof I have made to cease. Therefore are my loins filled with pain. This is Isaiah talking. Now, considering what we've already discussed, why would Isaiah get sick at his stomach and just bowl over and get sick and just absolutely be crushed at the prospect of Babylon being defeated? You see why? This was their big arm they were leaning on. All right? So, verse number 3 says, pangs have taken hold upon me, as the pangs of a woman that travaileth. I've never had birth pains. I've never had that. I've had kidney stone, and you've got gout, and you've probably stepped on an upturned electrical plug, so we all know what pain is. I was bowed down at the hearing of it. He just folded up in the middle, like his intestines are just coming apart. I was dismayed at the seeing of it. My heart panted. No, not Babylon. No, please not Babylon. Fearfulness affrighted me. The night of my pleasure hath turned into fear unto me. Now, down in Judah, there's a little different atmosphere. Here's the atmosphere culturally in Jerusalem, basically. Prepare the table. All right, prepare the table. When we talk about tables, we're thinking of stuff like this and our dining tables. That phrase means to spread the rugs. This was the way they set the table. Y'all been to Abraham's tent down there, and you sit on the floor and lean on a pillow, and they got this big rug, and all the food is there. And so, well, guys, let's just spread. We're okay. Everything's all right. Babylon. We've got them on 911. So all we got to do is call them, and we're good. So, watch in the watchtower, eat, drink. Wait a minute. Ye princes, rise, and anoint the shield. Somehow in the middle of dinner, they get an emergency call, and the prince, and we're talking about military people now, anoint the shield, which what they would do, they had shields made out of bull hide, normally 2 layers of bull hide, and to keep it soft and supple so it wouldn't crack when an arrow or spear hits it, you'd rub olive oil on it. And so it's time now to rub oil on your shields because apparently something's going on and we got to go take care of business. And so they were to anoint their shield. For thus saith the Lord, or for thus hath the Lord said unto me, go, set a watchman, let him declare what he seeth. Now, there's a war between Babylon and Assyria, okay? Judah's all relaxed now. And so the Lord said, no, you go put somebody up in the watchtower and watch and see what happens. And he saw a chariot with a couple of horsemen, and a chariot of asses, and a chariot of camels. And he hearkened diligently with much heed. He was staring at what was coming over the horizon, and he cried, a lion, and the phrase means as a lion. So like a lion is roaring. This is how loud this guy got with this announcement. My Lord, I stand continually upon the watchtower in the daytime, and I am set in my ward whole nights. I've been up here like 24 hours, and behold, here cometh a chariot of men with a couple of horsemen. A messenger is coming with news of the war. What kind of news are we going to get? Babylon is fallen. That's the worst possible news that the Jews could get. It's even repeated. It's fallen. Oh, and by the way, not only did Babylon fall, but all the graven images of her gods he hath broken into the ground. Here's what God did to Egypt and Babylon. He put them in a situation where they had to pray to something. So what did they do? They prayed to their false gods. Deliver us, oh mighty, whatever his name was. Well, it didn't work. And so the Lord used these attacks for a number of things. One of the lessons that he was trying to teach the Egyptians specifically, this stuff is useless. These are pieces of wood and metal and stone. They are absolutely useless. And so the Lord has Assyria just bust them all up. Worst possible news. Assyria destroyed Babylon in 689 BC. So, wow, now, about the only hope that Judah thought she had left is gone. Babylon is gone. Now again, what does it take to get people to understand? Quit looking out here and look up here. Even tonight, God controls the destinies of hundreds of millions of people. God does that. There are, 7 billion people on the planet, something like that? 35 million of us here in the United States. Militaries that are just beyond description. We've got nuclear weapons. Russia's got nuclear weapons. Iran's got nuclear weapons. We help pay for those, by the way. There are some nasty, nasty people in this world that have some nasty, nasty weapons. And here's kind of a historical, frightening thing to me. We've never invented a weapon that we haven't used. This stuff is going to be used. All right? It's not going to go to waste. And Israel is the target. And I just think it is so odd that of all the nations on earth that everybody seems to hate, this one little, just this little sliver of a nation. Everybody in the world hates them. Well, nearly everybody in the world. And now we're crushed. This was the last hope. And it's almost like somebody puts a microphone under the nose of the people there in Jerusalem and says, how do you feel right now? After your team loses, those people always come up and say, well, how do you feel? Well, how do you think I feel? Verse 10. O my threshing, and the corn of my floor, that which I have heard of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, have I declared unto you. This is Isaiah. We feel like grain on the threshing floor. They would cut this grain in the field and throw it on the threshing floor, and oxen would walk on it and break it out of off the stem. And we just feel like donkeys have just been walking all over us. Well, that's exactly what's happened here. You put your trust in the wrong thing, and now the Lord has just completely dissolved what you put your trust in. Now, verses 11 and 12 are weird. We really don't know much about this. I have looked and looked and looked and looked, and everybody says basically the same thing. This is weird. We just don't have a whole lot of historic information to build underneath this, but here's the bottom line of it. All right, verse 11. The burden of Duma. Now, that could be a play on words. The word Duma means stillness or silence, and it's Edom. So, not a whole lot was going on in this part. This is east, on the east side of the Jordan River, over toward north of Arabia. And so they were under oppression by the Assyrians, but there was no direct attack going on right now, okay? So just kind of like they got a gun to their head, but nobody's pulling the trigger yet. So the burden of Duma, he calleth to me out of Seir, and Seir was a mountain in Edom. Watchman, what of the night? Watchman, what of the night? In other words, what time is it? And the watchman said, well, the morning comes. Haven't seen anything. It's just the same as it was last night. And it looks like it's going to be the same tonight, so nothing's happening. Also, the night, if ye will inquire ye, and return, and come, because nothing's going on. So there was no relief in sight. Whatever was going on in Edom in verses 11 and 12, it wasn't going to change. So stay in the watchtower and just watch. And well, the same thing happened yesterday, and the same thing happened last week. And so that is as good as verses 11 and 12 were revealed to us. That it's bad, and we don't see any relief in sight, you know. Now, verse 13. We're going to slip over to Arabia. So we've got the coastline of the Mediterranean. Then you've got the Philistine coastline where Ashdod and those 5 cities were. Then you got the Jordan River, and then there's Israel on the west side of the Jordan. And then you step across the Jordan River, and then you've got the east, and you go far enough east, and you get to this really, really desert area that we just refer to as Arabia. And here's the burden upon Arabia. In the forest of Arabia shall ye lodge, O traveling companies of Dedanim. These traveling companies, that phrase means caravans. So for some reason, these people are on the move, all right? Verse number 14 says, the inhabitants of the land of Tema. Now, Tema was an oasis in northwest Arabia, very famous area for water, and they were pretty good shape food-wise. They brought water to him. So there were some refugees that were fleeing into that part of the world, trying to get away from this Assyrian onslaught. They were thirsty, so the people in Tema brought them water because they had springs there in this oasis. They prevented with their bread him that fled. And so they took care of the refugees. They had camps in this oasis, and so the people of Tema would feed them and water them and take care of them. They fled from the swords. So these refugees are trying to get away from this military action, from the drawn sword, and from the bent bow, and from the grievousness of war. We still do that today, man. There are people all over the world in camps. Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't there a side beside Syria and Turkey that they had these camps just recently?
Oh, these places are blowing up with these people, and they got to be fed and watered and taken care of, you know. Yeah, and that's exactly what we've got here. So this is an old problem. For thus hath the Lord said unto me, within a year, according to the years of an hireling, and the year a servant will often contract with a boss or a master for 1 year, and all the glory of Kedar shall fail, and the residue of the number of archers. These people were famous for being dead eyes with bow and arrow. So within a year of this prophecy, these archers are going to be diminished, and the mighty men of the children of Kedar, which is in northern Arabia, shall be diminished, for the Lord God of Israel hath spoken it. Within a year. What happened in a year? Well, in Assyrian Chronicles, there are references to Sargon II, who was the son of Sargon. And in 715 BC, guess what Sargon II did? He defeated a lot of the Arabian tribes in this part of the world and deported them to what would later be known as Samaria within a year. Absolutely incredible. God said this will happen. It happened. The Lord, here the Assyrians would move their king over here, and the Lord would move his bishop here. Check. And then the Ethiopians would move over here, and the Lord, check. He had them hemmed in. And all of those pieces on the game board that Judah thought were going to defend them, the Lord captured them. And just took them off the board and left them wide open. And here was this hulk of a bear called Assyria right in front of them. And Judah was like, whoa, what are we going to do now? It may be too late to pray. Which is what they should have done in the first place. And so whatever you're facing tonight, I don't know what it is. I doubt if it's archers and the men of Kedar, and I doubt it's any of that. But does God, let me just ask you, you folks are wise in the Word, does God still stand up for his people in 2019? What do we often do, though? We worry ourselves into ulcers. We do. And, the Lord, he shoots warning shots across our bow, too. That ain't, it's like, whoa, okay, I got you. And so let me just encourage all of us. We're probably all facing some kind of an Assyrian threat, financially, physically, emotionally, whatever. And if people don't have the answer for you, that's okay. God knows. He knows exactly what to do. And I'm just telling you, we have been given authority by Jesus Christ. We have been given authority to speak his presence into our circumstances and to defeat these things. So let me just encourage you. Use the authority you have. And I think often we're kind of like, let's say we're ambassadors to Costa Rica, and we have the full authority and power to make decisions in Costa Rica for the United States. And we go down there, and we never make a decision. Well, I don't, just whatever y'all want to do. Why not just be the ambassador you were sent there to be? Use the authority that you have been given in the nation of Costa Rica. Exercise your legal right to be there. And so as Christians in this world, God has given us authority. Don't live under the circumstances. Don't do that. I think that by your faith, you can create your circumstances. Okay? So next week, you're going to get really close to home, because in chapter 22, guess who gets in the sights? Jerusalem. Yeah. You would think, well, the Lord ain't going to touch the Jews. Yeah, well, think again. Next week, matter of fact, we've got 25 verses dedicated to those folks. And so we'll pick that up next week. All right, I'm going to let you go a little early tonight. Thank y'all for being here. Let me ask you honestly now, just be totally, absolutely authentic with me. Is this kind of thing boring to you, with the dates and the history? Okay, all right. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that, because if it was, attack us. Exactly right. I mean, we think we're the tall hog at the trough, We're nothing compared to him, That's exactly right.
I think that a great number of United States citizens, namely Democrats,
Invincible. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. All right. Christmas boxes are due Sunday, and I'll have the information on the turkey and the ham deal by Sunday. Haley should be getting back with me pretty shortly on the turkeys and the ham down at Winn-Dixie. And so we've still got some. No, we're not doing any cooking at all. We're going to provide the canned goods or the box goods here, and then we'll give them a certificate to go down to Winn-Dixie and get a ham or a turkey, whichever one they want. So, no, you ladies, you're going to do enough just by, and guys, putting the stuff in the box and bringing it here, and we'll let them do the cooking. All right? Yes, sir.
I'll have it for you Sunday.
Now, in my box, we need like 2 or 3 boxes of 3. He ain't going to let me finish. He's like, just immediately started doing it. Oh, that's great. That's great. All right. Thank y'all for being here tonight. God bless you. Y'all be careful going home in this frigid weather, please. And yes. Oh, my goodness. Lord, thank you so much for being a God who doesn't drop anybody between the cracks. You don't overlook people because you're afraid of them. You don't let nations push you around because you don't have the firepower to stop them. My goodness, with a word, you can destroy militaries. You've done it before in the past. You've used the courses and the stars in their rotation to defeat Sisera. And thank you for being a God who is all-powerful, yet, Lord, you're patient, and I'm grateful for that. And may we look to you first for our defense and our help and our needs and our resources and encouragement. May you be the first place we look. Thank you for these who are here tonight. Bless us in Jesus' name. Amen.